Resident Evil Genesis, a novelization by Keith R.A. DeCandido. Chapter 12. As Rain Melendez pushed the alleged cop toward the mirror door, she spared a thought for the jerks back at LAPD, especially the one jerk who kept her from joining SWAT. If only Captain Fisher could see her now. The only regret that Rain had in her entire life was that Fisher died of a heart attack last year, before she had the chance to properly rub the jerk's nose in her success working for the Umbrella Corporation's elite security division. Damn, she didn't even think the old jerk had a heart. For years, she'd been building the cred to get put on SWAT. She had the chops. She had the skills. She had the best marksmanship in her class. The class in front of her, the class behind her, and every class going back to whenever there was a class. She could hit the broad side of a fly. But that was the problem. Marksmanship. Lieutenant Dodorio had warned her. He said that you have to have a dick to be in SWAT, and you have to be a dick to run it. And Carl Fisher, Dodorio had said, he's the biggest dick with the smallest dick, and he won't let you anywhere near SWAT, even if you wear a strap-on. Rain didn't listen to Dodorio. She tried anyhow. She did everything right. They still didn't let her in. She was too much of a risk, Fisher said. Young, attractive Latina chick. The guys would be too busy asking her out and playing Sir Galahad and not focusing on the job. Fisher looked her in the eye and said, only way you get on SWAT is if the whole unit gets taken over by queers, and that ain't happening on my watch. She went back to her precinct, back to her patrol car. Dodorio made her a training officer, gave her a second stripe, and had her take the rookies under her wing. It was the best he could offer her. And it was Jack as far as she was concerned. The only reason she'd even gone to the academy was so that she could join SWAT. She promised herself that she'd be the first woman to make it. Captain Fisher nailed that dream to the wall. Unable to face another day getting into that goddamn patrol car with some green rookie, she quit. 2 weeks later, a hot-looking black guy with a deep voice said he wanted to hire her. She'd get to do everything SWAT did, except she'd get paid about 8 billion times what the LAPD could cough up. The only catch was moving to Raccoon City. What the hell, she wanted to get out of California anyhow. Sticking her Colt at the temple of Detective Matthew Addison of the RCPD, she forced him forward. Maybe he was a legit cop. In L.A., she would have pegged him for a fake. He looked more like the kind of guy they cast as detectives in crappy action movies. But some of the gold shields in Raccoon looked like this guy, so maybe he was for real. He still didn't have any business in the mansion. This was Umbrella's turf. The locals usually knew better than to mess around with the big company. Kaplan had opened the door that was disguised as a mirror. They filed in, Warner taking point, Vance and J.D. right behind him. Then one, and the Abernathy woman, followed by Danilova, the medic. Then Rain and Addison, with Kaplan bringing up the rear. They proceeded down the wide concrete staircase, even as the mirror doors closed behind them. Within seconds they arrived at the train station. Piles of trunks, crates, and boxes, most labeled with Umbrella's funky logo, were all over the place, but there was a clear path to the single-car train that went back and forth to the Hive. When they got to the bottom of the stairs, Alice asked, "What is this place?" Rain shook her head. Alice had always come across to Rain as a stuck-up jerk. Now she was being a stupid stuck-up jerk. "It's a train station," J.D. said, as if she was an idiot. "You lose your eyesight as well as your memory?" Then again, it was hardly her fault that the stupid computer gassed her. Rain had no idea what the little kid computer was thinking. Then again, if they'd known that, one wouldn't have needed to bring the team in the first place. Addison stopped walking. Rain shoved him forward. "Move it!" "Enough, Rambet. I get the picture." "Real original detective." Rain got enough stupid Rambo jokes from the LA cops, and those were the ones who liked her. Mouth off again, and I'll blow your head off. Before Addison could give her an excuse, Alice spoke up again. She was standing with her arms folded. Rain actually saw a glimmer of the intimidating woman that Rain knew Alice was capable of being, though the effect was pretty much wiped out by that froofy dress she was wearing. Somebody tell me what's going on here, or we're not taking another step. One walked up to her and looked her right in the eye. The first time Rain was on the receiving end of that "don't mess with me" look was also the last. Mainly because even after 7 years of dealing with the scum of the earth that populated the parts of L.A. she patrolled as a uniform, nothing scared her more than one's "don't mess with me" look. You'll get your briefing when I'm ready to give it to you, soldier. To her credit, Alice didn't back down. Rain had to admit, she had balls. Amazingly, one broke the stare first, turning to the others. Warner, Vance, load the train. JD, set the timer. Kaplan, get the engine going. By this time, everyone had removed their gas masks. If Alice and this Addison bozo were up and about, there was nothing to worry about on that score. Yet. Besides, those things really messed up your peripheral vision. JD reached into one of the pouches in his uniform and pulled out a metal bar, which he attached to the wall. It gave a digital reading that matched the one on Rain's wrist, and on everyone else's wrist. 2:48:42. A second later, it was 2:48:41. That was how long they had to find out what the heck was up in the Hive. Kaplan ran to the train, which sat parked on the tracks, with no lights coming from it. One went in next, followed by Rain, pushing Addison ahead of her. JD and Alice came in behind them. The train was mostly one big space, with 2 trapdoors in the floor for access to the undercarriage. One of those trapdoors was open. Aside from some metal tubes tied up and banging from the ceiling in one corner, the train was empty. The first thing Kaplan did was go to the tiny engineer's alcove up front. He pushed a few buttons, then turned around. Power's down. One turned to Rain. So fix it. She smiled. I'm on it. Rain nodded to JD, who nodded right back, unholstered his Smith & Wesson pistol, and pointed it at Addison's head. Only then did Rain holster her own pistol and remove a small flashlight, placing it between her teeth. She jumped down the open trapdoor. The rails themselves were raised about 2 feet over the ground, making it a lot easier to do under-train maintenance. Removing the flashlight from her teeth, she flicked it on and shone it to the bottom of the train. It didn't take long to dope out why the power was down. 4 of the giant plug junctions were hanging uselessly from the bottom of the train, and the main circuit to the third rail was disconnected. Rain frowned. Some bozo had deliberately jumped under the train and cut the power. Didn't even bother to shut the trap door. Was the train in for maintenance, or did someone want the train out of commission? However, she didn't give it much thought. That was why she never tried for detective. Thinking wasn't her thing. Kicking butt and taking names was. Or just kicking butt and letting them keep their own names. Putting the flashlight back in her mouth and shining it on the plugs, she reattached the male plugs to the female plugs. Then she heard the noise. At first she thought it was something slithering, or maybe it was water dripping. She squatted down so she could see under the rails, shining the flashlight in front of her. All she saw was a dead end. At that dead end was an old wireframe vent that had what looked like a rat-chewed hole in it. She shook her head. Multi-million-dollar, multinational corporation, but their basements are just as crappy as a housing development in Watts. The noise was still there, but it was faint. Probably the rats. She stood up, not giving it another thought. You done yet? Rain whirled around, her right hand moving to her gun holster, and almost pulling it out before her brain registered that the voice belonged to J.D., who was hanging upside down from the train. He hit her with that dumb grin of his. Jumpy. She hit him right back with as close as an approximation of one's "don't mess with me" look as she could manage. Then she reattached the train to the third rail, sending sparks out through the undercarriage. "Whoa!" J.D. cried, and hightailed it back to the inside of the car. Rain grinned. She and J.D. came to the company together, but he was a Navy SEAL who'd been doing wet work for the CIA when one made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He had pegged her as some kind of charity hire, something to give the team a PC look for the stockholders' benefit. She disabused him of that crazy idea soon enough. Rain Melendez was no politically correct poster girl, and she put her skills against his skills any day of the week. So did one. He assigned them to be partners. J.D. moaned for a week, but one said it was that or lose the job. He said it with the "don't mess with me" look. J.D. went along. He gave her crap at every opportunity, but he went along. They trained together, and she kept up with his government-trained skills every step of the way. Eventually, he admitted she had what it took. Within 2 weeks, they were a lean, mean fighting machine. But he still gave her guff every chance he got. As she clambered back up into the car, Warner and Drew were bringing a big trunk on board. Probably that thing Kaplan needed to shut down the little kid computer. Rain didn't know the details and didn't give a crap. That geek junk was Kaplan's thing. Speaking of Kaplan, he stood by a red button. "Stand clear," he yelled, then pushed it. The trapdoor closed. One looked at Alice and Addison. "Sit on the floor, stay out of the way." They both hesitated, but eventually sat on the floor. Kaplan got back into the engineer's cubbyhole. Seconds later, with a mild lurch, the train started moving. Rain looked around, noticed that there was one other compartment besides the main one and the engineer's space. It was blocked off by a door. When she tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. It had a handle knob, but the handle seemed to be stuck. She tried to move it several times, but nothing happened. She stopped for a moment to catch her breath before trying again, only to notice that Addison and Alice were both staring at her. It almost looked like they were accusing her of something. Or maybe they were just touched in the head. Correction. Alice was touched in the head, and the jury was out on the other bozo. "You got a problem?" she asked angrily. "How's that door?" one asked. Tearing her gaze away from the pair, she said, "Sealed shut." J.D. volunteered himself. "Let me." Rain indicated the door with an exaggerated flourish. Let the macho bozo flex his muscle. He gave her a wink. When they first started training together, she used that wink to goad herself to do better, in the hopes of wiping it off his face. Now, she was pretty much used to it, and chalked it up to part of J.D.'s overall jerkishness. She took great satisfaction out of watching him struggle just as hard as she did with the door. Then, the dork yanked it open. His head was down when he did it, so he didn't see the limp body inside the compartment until it fell on him. "Damn!" J.D. cried as he pushed the form off him and whipped out his Smith & Wesson. Next to Rain, one pointed his MP5K assault rifle at the man. For her part, Rain just smiled at J.D. "Jumpy?" J.D. gave her a screw you look. She just kept smiling. Bozo. Rain recognized the guy after a minute. It was Alice's partner on mansion duty. That new jerk, Parks. Insisted everyone call him Spence, since his first name was Percival. Spent his first 2 weeks on the job hitting on Rain, and wouldn't take "screw you" for an answer. He and Alice had to pretend to be married as part of their cover at the mansion, and she'd heard rumors. Most of them came from Warner, who said they were maintaining the cover under the covers. All Rain could think was, better Alice than her. Spence made her want to throw up. She looked over at Alice, still sitting on the floor next to the cop. As Rain watched, Alice stared at Spence's left hand, then at her own. The wedding ring. Rain chuckled to herself as Alice took the ring off and read the inscription. If Rain remembered right, it said property of Umbrella Corporation inside the ring. Real romantic. If Alice was still memory loss girl, reading that was going to be a come down. Danilova walked over and knelt down next to Spence. She snapped a vial under his nose, which revived him pretty damn quick. What? Lie still, the medic said. Spence started squirming, like he was having a bad dream or something. Lie still. The Russian woman held Spence down with one hand while taking out a penlight with the other. First, she pried his eyes open and shined the light in each eye. The pupils dilated as expected. Then she moved the light around. Watch this light. Follow it. Spence stopped squirming and did so. The medic held up 3 fingers. How many fingers am I holding up? 3. Good. Now tell me your name. Spence hesitated, then looked confused. I don't know. Danilova looked up at one. He's fine. She spoke in a no-nonsense tone. Memory loss, just like the other one. One nodded as if he expected that answer. And who knew? Maybe he did. Spence, meanwhile, sat up, holding his head as if it hurt. He stared at Alice, who was staring right back. Again, Rain chuckled to herself. The 2 of them had been living together in that mansion for months, and neither of them had the first clue who the other one was. Pathetic. The noise of the train started to drop. One turned to address the entire train. Everyone get ready to move out. Rain moved to one of the many open entryways to the train as it pulled into the Hive end of the station. As the train rumbled in, lights went on in succession, illuminating the platform. Like the one on the mansion side, it was full of crates labeled with Umbrella's logo. From here on in, it was routine. Rain had these maneuvers down when she was doing her own private training for SWAT, and she fell into it easily here. She, J.D., and Warner took point, rotating cover, each with their rifles out and ready. Both clips in her MP5K were fully loaded, laser sight ready to go. That was the other nice thing about working for Umbrella. They had all the latest and finest toys. LAPD probably wouldn't have had assault rifles this hot even for SWAT, and if they did, they sure as heck wouldn't have the double clip. No way that'd be in the budget. The private sector, Rain had learned, didn't skimp on the important stuff. Soon they arrived at another big concrete staircase, not having seen a single sign of life. Rain was in the lead when they hit the bottom of the staircase. She put up a fist, signaling a temporary stop. Behind her, both J.D. and Warner came to a halt. Behind them, one did likewise, passing on the halt signal to the others. The door was shut, and from the looks of it, sealed. Damn. She signaled to go ahead. One put down his rifle. Let's get that door. Rain nodded. She moved up the stairs with J.D. and Warner alongside. Kaplan and Drew followed a minute later, bearing their trunk full of stuff. Besides the toys Kaplan needed to deal with the computer, they also had a laser drill that would get the door open. At least, that was the plan. Drew opened the trunk and tossed the welder's helmet at Rain. You'll need this. She smiled as she unerringly caught the dark helmet. It's even in my color. Yeah, it's how she likes her coffee and her men. J.D. gave her his wink as he said it. Warner chuckled. Don't let the boss hear you say that. Please. Rain shook her head. Yeah, if you just went by the face, one was a damn attractive dude. But she viewed him as pretty much asexual. She'd no more consider doing him than doing a stone wall. Heck, she'd sooner do Kaplan. Listen to me. Rain glanced down the staircase at the voice. It was Alice, standing next to one. I want to know who you people are, and I want to know what's going on here. For his part, one didn't even spare her a glance. He was looking around, taking in the surroundings. Rain had no doubt that he was coming up with about 76 different ways to secure the area. Now! That got one's attention, and Rain's as well. Even without her memory, it looked like she still had the same brass cojones. There weren't too many people with the balls to talk to one in that tone of voice, at least not twice. But then, just because she didn't have her memory didn't mean she wasn't her, and they didn't make just any old jerk the head of security for the Hive. One spoke in a mostly straight-up tone of voice. You and I have the same employer. We all work for the Umbrella Corporation. The mansion is an entrance to the Hive. Your security operatives placed there to protect that entrance. Alice removed her wedding ring. What about this? One came as close to a smile as Rain had ever seen. Your marriage is a fake, just part of your cover to protect the secrecy of the Hive. And what is the Hive? Spence asked. One looked at Kaplan. Show them. Rain turned to see that Drew and JD had set up the laser cutter. Rain put the helmet on, fired up the cutter, and went to work. Her best bet was trying to slice out the panel in the middle of the door. That would cut the circuit, as well as provide a handy little hole in the door. The cutter was loud enough to drown out Kaplan and One explaining the Hive to the two people responsible for its security. No, this wasn't a totally screwed-up scenario. The computer going all run silent, run deep, the security unconscious and losing their memory, some cop wandering around, and they still didn't know jack about what was going on. When she had sliced out a rectangle, it fell to the floor with a satisfying clang. Rain switched the cutter off and raised the helmet. From down the stairs, she could hear Spence asking, Why can't I remember anything? The Hive has its own defense mechanisms, One was explaining. All computer-controlled. A nerve gas was released into the house. The primary effect of the gas is complete unconsciousness, lasting anywhere up to 4 hours. Secondary effects are varied, but can include acute memory loss. For how long? Spence asked. Subjective. An hour, day, week. Addison chose this moment to speak up. So you're saying this place was attacked? I'm afraid things are a little more complicated than that. Before One could explain, Rain said, Sir, we've breached the Hive. One nodded, and the rest of them fell into formation. Rain was half convinced that one of the 3 newbies was going to shoot their mouth off, but they didn't. Maybe they'd asked their share of questions. Kaplan got the door open, then stepped back. Rain, Warner, and Drew covered One and JD as they took point. JD had put his night vision gear on his head. One simply said, JD. Nodding, JD put the night vision cylinder over his eye. He looked like some kind of Borg. He entered the dark room. Rain held her MP5K at the ready and waited. Suddenly, the lights went on. Not just that, but there was noise. Sounded like street noise. The room was an elevator bay, but the windows showed some kind of cityscape. One gave the signal and they moved in, keeping in formation, covering each other. Except Olga, anyhow. She had that doodad of hers out and was looking at it. Then she looked up. Halon content has dissipated. Rain thought it was a damn good thing they took off the gas masks. Alice and the Addison guy walked over to the window, looked at the view. Makes it easier to work underground, Addison said, thinking that there's a view. Rain gave him a suspicious look. Then a noise got her attention. She turned, but it was just One, JD, and Warner prying the elevator door open. But there wasn't a car on the other side. JD tossed a flare down the shaft. Rain walked up behind him and peered over his shoulder. The green light of the flare lit up the shaft and hit a lot of loose cables, scraps of metal, and pieces of plastic. Somebody had taken the express to the basement. JD looked at One. Looks like we're taking the stairs. One nodded and gave a signal to move out. Rain, JD, and Warner did rotating cover at point as they headed down the metal staircase. It would take them to the working levels. The plan was to take them to the Red Queen's chamber and shut her down. One looked at Kaplan as they headed down right behind the 3 leading the way. Status. Red Queen is locked onto us. She knows that we're here. Alice frowned. Who's the Red Queen? It's a state-of-the-art artificial intelligence, one said. She's the computer that controls the Hive. Rain wondered when the stupid girl was going to get her memory back. She was tired of listening to people who should know better having to have their hands held. So this isn't a military base, Alice said. One almost smiled. Umbrella could buy and sell the military twice over. Yeah, Addison muttered. I bet the pay's a lot better, too. Just as Rain was ready to give Addison a good punch, they entered a hallway that was sealed off. There were 3 or 4 entryways, all of which were covered by Umbrella-brand plexiglass, which was a good thing, seeing as how the lab spaces they were covering were flooded. Water spouted out through some pinholes in one of the labs, but still, it looked like someone sealed the rooms and then activated the sprinkler. Jesus. Doing his usual, stating the obvious thing, Kaplan said, "This is going to slow us down." He showed one, the schematic on his wrist top. Our route to the Queen takes us straight through these labs. Rain, JD, see how bad the flooding is. Kaplan, find us an alternate route. Grateful for the chance to go off with JD and leave the bozos behind, Rain went ahead, stepping through the spouts. This is messed up, she said as they went forward. JD shrugged. Whatever, just another job. In, out, beers at Bar's Bar when we're done. I'm sick of that place. They got crappy tequila. Grinning, JD said, You ought to try a real drink sometime. Rain didn't even look at him. You drink Budweiser, JD. I ain't taking no lecture on booze from you. JD laughed. After a minute, Rain returned it. Yeah, that was it. In and out, and hope these 2 bozos got their memory back soon. Chapter 13. Knowing her name was Alice Abernathy should have made her feel better. It didn't, especially. According to the head of the commando team, who just went by 1 for some odd reason, Alice was the head of security for the Hive, which was a neat trick considering she'd never heard of it, or the Umbrella Corporation. On the other hand, the corridors had an oddly familiar feeling as she walked through them. Maybe it was the truth. Frustratingly, she had no way of verifying anything. Her memory was still Swiss cheese. She knew, for example, that the World Series was a baseball game, and she remembered who won it last year, but she could not picture the sport or remember how it was played. She just hoped this damn nerve gas wore off quickly. The man she was pretending to be married to was named Spence Parks. The cop, according to his ID, was named Matt Addison. He still hadn't explained why he was here. Then again, no one had asked him either. What happened here? Spence asked. Alice noticed that Matt moved closer, and one gave him a suspicious look. 5 hours ago, Red Queen went homicidal, sealed the Hive, and killed everyone down here. Jesus. You can't be sure of that, Matt said. There must be hundreds of people working here. 523, one said coldly. He went on. When we realized what was happening, my team was dispatched to shut her down. Why did she do it? Alice asked. That we don't know, but outside interference is a possibility. That last sentence spoken while looking directly at Matt. Matt was about to say something, but then he suddenly jumped. Jesus! His sudden movement startled Alice. She stepped back and saw what Matt saw. A body. It was a woman, blonde hair from the looks of it, floating in the water on the other side of the glass. She wore all white, and her skin had gone pale enough to match the outfit. According to the ID badge still pinned to her lab coat, her name was Anna Bolt. Spence looked at Alice with concern. Hey, you okay? Alice grunted in reply. Removing his leather jacket, Spence said, Here. No, it's okay. Even as she spoke, though, she realized that she was cold. Her arms had unconsciously folded so she could warm herself and her exposed flesh, which there was a lot of in this stupid dress, was covered in goosebumps. "Come on, it's cold in here." He held up the jacket. With a small smile, she gave in and took it. As her fingers brushed his, she suddenly remembered something. His hands ran gently up and down her naked flesh, his calloused fingers playing over her skin, feeling both rough and smooth at the same time. His lips hungrily attacked hers, as if they were trying to consume each other. Their tongues explored, teasing, tasting, dancing. He pulled her slim, athletic form tight against his muscular body. It seemed their marriage wasn't quite the sham one thought it was. She decided to venture a question. Do you remember anything before this?" Spence shook his head. No, nothing before the train. You?" "No," she lied. "Nothing." Why did she lie? For some reason, with the memory flash came a feeling. Don't trust Spence. No, it was more general than that. It was not wanting to trust anyone. Damn it, what the hell was going on with her head? "Got it." Alice looked up to see the computer geek, what was his name, Kaplan, showing one something on that wrist-top computer of his. "We double back, cut through dining hall B, then we're back on track." Even as he spoke, the other two, whom one had identified as Rain Melendez and J.D. Hawkins, returned. "Sir, no go," Rain said. "The whole level's flooded." "All right, we're behind schedule," one said, "so let's move it." Another of the commandos, Alfonso Warner, walked up to Spence and Alice and gave them a move-it head nod. Without waiting for any kind of acknowledgement, he went ahead. Alice looked at Spence. They each solemnly mimicked Warner's head nod. Then they both laughed. Maybe she should trust him. "Come on," Spence said. As they started walking behind Warner and the others, Alice said, "Strange that over 500 people work in this place. So far, we've only seen one." "You think they're lying?" "I don't know." She shook her head. "Seems like a lot of firepower just to shut down a computer." Spence shrugged. Maybe whoever briefed them didn't tell them the whole truth. Or maybe they didn't tell us the whole truth yet. Behind them, Rain took a quick look at the body of Anna Bolt. "Poor bastards." Alice couldn't argue with the sentiment. After a few minutes, they got to another sealed entrance. Kaplan entered a code into the pad, and it slid open. Warner, J.D., and Vance Drew went in first, in a standard rotating cover flank. How the hell did she know that was standard? That question was superseded by another one. What the hell kind of dining hall was this? The space they entered was huge. It was also dark and dank and filled with boxes that were about 8 feet tall with large tubes leading in and out of them. No sign of any of the accoutrements one would expect in a dining hall, or much of anywhere else if it came right down to it. "Kaplan?" one asked. "Dining hall B," Kaplan shrugged helplessly. "It's what it says on the map." One walked over to take a look at Kaplan's display. "Maybe you're reading it wrong." Mac gave one a hard look. "Maybe the corporation's keeping a few secrets down here, something you're not supposed to see." Kaplan actually looked worried about that, but one remained unaffected. "J.D., you and Rain keep the prisoner here and secure the exit." The medic took another air sample. "Sir, halon levels are non-existent in this room. Could be the system malfunctioned." Alice wondered what that meant exactly. Then again, there was no reason for anything to start making sense now. One studied the medic's readout, then looked up. "All right, listen up. There may be survivors, so give me a search line, but keep it tight." Rain shoved Matt toward one of the smaller crates for him to sit on. "Move it!" They moved out in different directions. Alice and Spence were left alone, with only Rain and J.D. staying back to guard Matt. Apparently, amnesia notwithstanding, they were well placed enough to not need babysitters. So she wandered around the room. If she was supposed to be the head of security for this place, she probably knew what this room was really for. Maybe walking around would give her some kind of clue as to who she really was. As she navigated among the crates, she noticed that they all had two readouts. On top was some kind of pattern that looked like a stereo sound system oscillation. It was steady, but she had no clue what it was actually measuring, since there was no bass beat to be heard. On the bottom were one of two words lit up, stable and unstable. To her relief, stable was the one lit on all the crates she could see. She approached one of them. Each of the crates had a small window in it. Peering inside, she saw something. It was living, that was for sure, though it didn't look like anything she recognized. But then, would she recognize it even if it was something commonplace? It was 15 minutes before she remembered what a bathrobe was, for Christ's sake. Then again, this thing couldn't have been normal. It didn't have any eyes, for one thing. Its skin was all scaly, and it had tubes running all in and out of its body. Even if it was normal, it was pretty damn gross. Then she remembered something else. As the new password was entered into her monitor remotely by Lisa Broward, the licker came on screen. Alice knew that for a split second it could be seen on Lisa's monitor, too, before the Red Queen shut her out. One then scared the crap out of her by appearing next to her. She hadn't heard him approach. One moment he was just there. He was peering into the window. "I said keep it tight." He didn't even look at her. "Sorry, I'm not sure I want to remember what went on down here." Now he did look at her. In a softer voice than he'd used all day, he said, "I don't blame you." It was the closest one had come to being human since she met him. Or she supposed re-met him. Whatever. As she and One went back to the center of the room, not having found anyone or anything save the crates, Alice overheard J.D. and Rain talking, staring at one of the crates while they guarded Matt. "What the hell do they keep in these things?" J.D. asked. Rain shot him a look. "How do I know?" Warner, Kaplan, Drew, Spence, and the medic all rejoined them in the room's center. "Anything?" One asked. "No, sir," Kaplan said. The others just shook their heads. "All right. We're proceeding to the Red Queen's chamber. Rain, J.D., stay here with the prisoner. Let's move." Alice was grateful. Soon they'd be at the computer core. Then they could shut her down and get the hell out of this madhouse. Soon it'd all be over.